Good morning, guys. Good afternoon, good evening. I don't know where you are or when you're listening. It's good morning for me, though. So that's why I always say that. It's 11 o'clock on Tuesday, March 28th. I think I've got the date right, even. I don't know where the month is going. It is flying by, and I can't believe that. Holy cow! You're here for No Brush Required.
Ah!
Oh,
Hi.
oh my gosh. Who's cleaning in the background? Look over your shoulder.
Forest.
He's got his leg up over his head and he's doing a serious cleaning job there.
I thought, you know what? I'm going to go live from where I read the book.
Oh,
Just
okay.
because I'm all cozy. I got forest here. I've got my cushions. Normally I'm standing, right? So this
Yes.
is like,
Yes.
there's my big guy.
Oh, and look at that groovy lamp.
Yeah.
I was going to say, it has that look, but I love it.
Ancient. It's fallen over more times than I can count. It's like, remember when they I don't, maybe they still do them, the paper shades.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not easy to do.
Like from my undergraduate days, I think that's what we had on our student digs.
I have a
But
feeling I probably got this way back when I first had my first apartment. So
they're timeless.
timeless,
right?
and they don't fall apart.
Yeah.
Nothing falls apart. Like nothing.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Let's just do our little intro. Hey, if you're catching us for the first time, this is No Brush Required. We're Tamara Grant and Barbara Reed. We come on here every Tuesday and chat about art and whatever. And this is our second episode of our art book club, which means we suggested a book title about 6 weeks ago and gave everybody ample time to read it or not. And we'll chat about it today. And the book is Clear Seeing Place by Brian Rutenberg.
This is a book I wish I had a hard copy of instead of on my Kobo, because I would have post-it noted, highlighted so much in there that I just want to reread. In fact, I've read this now twice, and I could actually start again and read it again because there's so many nuggets in there. So many.
I hear you.
Oh my gosh. Like, especially even, I would say the second time I got even more out of it.
Yeah. I will confess, I've read 1.75 times. I read it in its entirety last year, and then this weekend I was pushing to read it again, and I didn't quite make it.
Oh, it's a pretty quick read, though. I mean, I finished my second time about 45 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So it's
still good. Well, I have lots of questions. I thought maybe we might first ask anybody who has read this, and you could give us the thumbs up in the comment section so we know whether or not there's anybody who has comments or commentary to add. And the way we did this last time is we just started talking. We threw some questions out. We answered them or not. And if you read the book and you want to come on and chat with us, it's called Clear Seeing Place by Brian Rutenberg. If you want to come on and join us, Patricia read it, Melody read it 4 times. Did you read it 4 times, Melody?
Oh, just 4 thumbs up.
Rena's read it.
Rena, yes.
Yes. So do you want to do a quick summary or like a little intro to what it's about, who he is? We can do that together.
Yeah, let's do it together because I'm terrible at these things. But he's an artist originally from South Carolina. So grew up in the South, the steamy South, and talks a fair bit about his childhood and how basically living outside all the time really impacted the way that he works and the way that he sees. Now lives in New York City. What a switch.
Yeah.
And basically this is kind of an accompaniment to his YouTube videos with his studio visits and his musings on life. I haven't seen a ton of his videos, which is stupid because the one I saw I just loved, but it requires actually sitting and watching the video. Yeah. Who lives in the neighborhood?
Patricia said that Brian lives in her neighborhood. She told me when she goes out for a walk, she just looks to see if she's going to catch a glimpse of him.
Well, like in the book, he talks about where he gets coffee and his, his coffee shops and his diners that he loves. But it is a peek into his studio and the way he thinks and his humor, and he's sharing, what he's learned over the years, and he gives some advice. He talks a little bit about his painting process, and very generous with his little tidbits of information.
And very unassuming and plain spoken. Like there's I have no doubt that he can be as highbrow as anybody else, because
like us.
But he's a serious student of art history, right?
Yeah.
So he loves art history. He reads a lot about art history. He listed all sorts of painters he talked about in this book. That one of my questions I'm going to ask you guys later is, what did you have to Google when you read the book?
I googled what was it? Oh, my mind is going blank. I'll think of the names, but two artists whose work he doesn't like, but Leroy Neiman and somebody else.
Can't remember.
But he was talking about, learn about even the art that you don't really like, especially if that artist does well, and talk to the collectors of that art to find out what they see in it. Yes, Glenn Gould, obsessed, came to Toronto and basically stalked a dead guy because Glenn Gould had long passed. But that I found fascinating, Rena.
Well, and that kind of goes to what seems like his overall driving force, persona, way of operating is to totally, and it's reflected in his paintings, if you've ever seen his paintings, is to totally immerse himself in something, to go down that rabbit hole, to let himself become completely obsessed, to learn as much as he possibly can, to experience it as in person as much as he can, which I just find fascinating. I mean, what an interesting personality, right?
And wouldn't he be wonderful to have on this? And I have been crafting an email in my mind now to send to him. Maybe we can entice him on.
Yes, maybe Patricia can go knock on his door.
Yeah, because we all like that when someone just shows up and asks for a favor.
Yes.
I even love that he said what was in his closet, and I thought, I could do that. Like, he has like a million pairs of the same style jeans, only black t-shirts, one black belt, and that's how he knows what he's going to put on every day. Just think, that's fantastic. I can totally relate.
Well, there's other creatives that have done that. So Steve Jobs is known for that as well. And I think I saw some interview with him where he talked about it as not having to make so many decisions. There's so many other decisions he needs to make in the day that you get fatigued from having to make decisions. And so certain things like what you're going to have for breakfast, where you're going to go for coffee, how you're going to walk to the studio, what you're going to wear. You do those same things every single day. They're out of your head. You don't have to make any decisions, right?
He said yes to art juice, but that was Louise Fletcher.
Yes. Well,
Bonnie.
You could mention that Louise has been on our show. There you go. That's part of your.
I have the posters too. Like, I would send the book club one.
Yes.
And I would send the Louise one, and maybe Rob and Nick Wilton.
Okay. Can I start with my questions?
Yeah, because I could just ramble about all the little things that I loved. Yeah.
Okay. Well, you're gonna be able to answer some of these. So the first thing is, because the way the book is structured, each little chapter, and they're little micro chapters that you can bookmark and go back to, is really kind of has an interesting quote and an interesting lesson in it. And they're all very pithy and short and sweet and to the point. And I'm curious, asking everybody, not just Barbara, to think of and share a favorite quote or lesson from the book, if you've read it, and then tell us why it resonated with you.
Okay, I'm the worst. I can't even answer that because it's in my freaking Kobo and I don't know how to go back and find stuff.
Okay.
So that will be somebody else's job.
Okay, well, I will tell you what mine was. There was a chapter called Speed. I'm not going to read you the whole chapter, but one of the things he said is painting is time travel. The idea that a photograph is the same time at the top of the image. It's the same at the top and the bottom of the image, but in painting, there's a different amount of time. If you go, especially he puts paint down in lots and lots of very thick layers. We all layer a lot and scrape back. So he talks about hundreds, maybe thousands of individual moments are stacked like deli meat, all working in unison. How's that for us?
I know.
So he says, you're simultaneously peering back in time and being slingshot into the present. And I thought, and that's sort of a metaphor for what we want people to see, that there was work going into a painting. The best paintings, I think, are ones where you can look at the piece and you can see that there was effort and there was decision making and maybe struggle, and that you can see hints of what was before, because we all know that what's on the surface is just the surface. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And I love time travel. We've talked about this. I'm a time travel nut. So that was my favorite quote, is painting is time travel. And I thought, and then he talks a little bit about how, for the painter as well, it does multiple things, because when you're in the process of painting, it can kind of both speed up time and then compress time, and time sometimes stands still. So the whole thought of time around painting was really interesting to me, because it describes the process, it describes the product, describes the state of mind of the painter and maybe of the viewer.
Okay, we need somebody else to give us something, because otherwise I have to get into my Kobo and I'll get lost into it.
Rena said her learning was the worst thing a painter can do is edit while he or she is painting. Yeah. Do you want to elaborate on that, Rena?
Pop on, elaborate.
How did that resonate for you? Or come on, if you're not at the studio and you want to come on and chat, just if you'd like to come on, all you need to do is hit that little movie camera with the plus at the bottom, and that requests an invite. And I'm going to come back to this too. Patricia has something to say. No finished painting ever looks as good as the one I see in my mind, but the very next one might. I loved this too.
We live in hope, don't we?
Yes.
We are. Yeah. We're almost goofy about that, because every painting is a new chance, right? And I love how he's not precious.
Yeah. But don't you find you had to learn that? Because initially, when I first started painting, it's that whole wanting to have something finished, having a finished product, having it done. And it's very freeing if you can acknowledge that it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the way you see it in your head. And that's okay, because, it's a moment in time. That painting captured a moment in time of you're working on it and where you got it to, and you can leave it and go on to the next thing, because the next thing might be even better.
Yeah. That's it. We live in hope, and it's so transient, and it even depends on what day of the week too. I find you can look at a painting and go, God, I'm madly in love with this piece, and then the next day it's like, I have no idea what I ever saw in this.
Yes.
Because we bring something to it.
That's right.
She can't pop on today, Rena said.
I think she's in the studio. She can't talk then. But she said it resonates with her because she's hyper aware of how editing can suck up your flow state, your good energy. It's so true. Like, as soon as you start to step back and that discerning part of your brain takes over and the voices kick in, then I get very hesitant to apply the next brushstroke, for sure.
Something I read like within the last 2 hours, because it was towards the end of the book, is he says that what he sees, particularly with somebody who's just starting out painting, is they put down a brush stroke, but then they go back and they monkey with it. He says, just make the stroke, move on to the next. So don't go back and try and finesse it or change it. Just make the stroke and keep going. Yeah. And I thought, yes, and that's sometimes very tough to do.
It is. Yeah, Rena says, cut the mental chatter. It's really hard to, isn't it? I you know what I've been learning lately, this is an aside, but listening to art podcasts while I'm in the studio is not good for what's going on in my head. Yeah. And Judy says, isn't that how you improve your work, though? The analysis? I'm not sure what you mean. You mean the chatter in the head? Well, I think it is, and I think he would argue it is too, but I think his argument is those two things need to be separate, that there's the doing and then there's the examination, and those things could be at different times, but not, in the same moment. And maybe that works for some people.
What is it that you start like a bricklayer, finish like a jeweler or something like that?
Oh, I like that one.
I could I think I've paraphrased it wrong. I'm not sure, but the idea is just get in there, muck about, finesse it later,
Yeah.
polish it later, right?
Yeah. Do then think, he said.
Yes.
I like that. Yeah, and I
Mhm.
think, Judy, I think you're right. For some people, it is a to and fro. But I wonder. I sometimes think that maybe that's a semantic argument too, because I think we all go to and fro, but it's how fast we go to and fro. And for some, I think maybe that flipping from one to the other, the rate that you do that is different for different artists and what works for them.
Mhm. So Rena, you always listen to music. Um, back to Tamara's point about listening to an art podcast while you're painting, it's almost like listening to a surgeon talk about a procedure while you're doing another procedure. And so your brain is just not able to focus on both of those things safely at the same time. Humor, like you're a big fan of Smartless. I find Smartless, for some reason, I can be laughing and listening to them, but my hands are still doing the work and my brain is somewhere else, which is a good thing in my case.
No, that's true, but I think they're not talking about art, and so
Yeah,
I would often
My
listen.
brain
Yes,
is like, it doesn't have time to respond to everything I'm doing on the canvas. It's almost like a mechanical thing, mixing paint, slapping paint on, but I'm fully engaged in their podcast and laughing my head off.
Okay, question 2.
Yeah.
I've got my question.
Well, that's good. I got
number
notes.
2. Did Brian Rutenberg say anything? Was there anything in the book that changed your mind about a belief that you held? It could be about art process, art history, art education. Did he say anything? Did you read anything that made you go, oh, that's challenging something that I believe, and maybe that's worth challenging?
He talked about there is no abstract work.
Right.
That I was kind of like, what are you talking about? And for me, I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I had to kind of give my head a little bit of shake, because I always thought all painting is really abstract painting.
Right. Yes.
That's right. It's a process, not a
style. She's
Have
got the quotes down.
Your Post-it notes.
She did her homework. Awesome job. Yeah, it's a process, not a style. I thought that was really interesting, and it made me go, oh, I guess I better change my bio.
Yeah, I know. There were a few things he said, actually, and how something about memory too. The belief that you're kind of recreating memories through abstraction. He said no, but they can't really. I don't have it.
I didn't quite understand that. I will say that was something that I was like,
the whole
I'm not quite sure.
Everything, yeah. How no, yeah. So
yeah, I wasn't
smarter than me could maybe say something about that.
Here, I'm going to read.
Yeah.
Can I read?
Yeah.
Memory is a word often used when speaking about painting, especially abstraction. The artist, quote, paints from memory, or their work is about memory. I don't believe that painting can be about memory, because we don't know what the painting looked like before, nor can we anticipate what it will look like later. Painting is experience, not the recreation of it. So I didn't quite, and then he says, memory requires that some past event made an impression upon or seduced to the artist. Therefore, working from memory implies the recreation of seduction, which is the definition of kitsch.
Okay, so then that's where he lost me, because I thought kitsch, I'm thinking like clown paintings, like black velvet.
Yeah,
that's
kitsch. Yeah. I should have Googled that. Kitsch, the definition is, he says, garishness, absurdity. Anyways, that was something that made me go, I'm not really sure what he meant by that.
We can ask him.
Well, because I often think about my own work, and so I work mainly process what's happening on the canvas, respond to it, and then at the end I look at it and I go, oh, and I'll say to myself, oh, that reminds me of, and I had some paintings I made before Christmas that just reminded me of when I was a little kid laying under the Christmas tree and looking up at the lights. And so the painting triggered a memory for me, and then I could use that memory to talk about the painting, which then triggered that same memory in somebody who bought the work, which was great. Yeah. But I didn't paint those from a memory of that. So anyways.
But he also said that we all are rooted to something, You know, in his case, it was, you know, growing up in the South and lying on the grass and like, you know, playing with the mud and seeing landscape from kind of like the grass level up, because that's how he used to look at it as a kid. So that was something rooted in him.
Right.
Wouldn't that be like a memory or like that comes out in his work? So that's where I was confused.
I'm not sure. I mean, my take on that was that's what he defines as a clear seeing place, which is the place that you come from that informs how you see the world. That is your lens on the world, and that challenge to what is your clear seeing place really stumped me. I don't know if anybody else was able to define what their clear seeing place was. You're welcome to comment if you did. Or if you think I'm completely wrong in interpreting what a clear seeing place is.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. What is a clear seeing place? You know?
Yeah.
And again, does it go back to memory, your experience, your history, your childhood,
well,
your environment? Because clearly his environment impacted hugely.
Okay, where are we going here? Rena, page 31, top part. Not sure I agree that paintings cannot be open to the viewer's interpretation. This is, so you're answering the question, something that might have changed your perspective or not. Not sure about that. I do agree we need to know what we are communicating, but I think viewers may find another response. They might have a different response to it. Page 31. What are you communicating? Be yourself. The rest is just constant practice. I liked that. I found this book was very much a cheerleading sort of book for emerging artists and maybe mid-career artists who, you know, may still have some, I mean, we all have doubts, right? We all have
including him. He
Yeah.
says all the time,
what the heck am I doing? But this sort of no nonsense, you know, don't get over yourself sort of approach to it all, I really appreciated, because it doesn't have to be that complicated. We're just you know, what does he say? We're just putting little skins of paint down on a canvas.
There's a funny line again. If I had been able to highlight it, I could read it verbatim, but something about someone told him he treats his studio or his paintings like a pair of old shoes, and he said, well, that would be insulting my old shoes. He says he's an absolute slob in his studio. And you know, it's just a total mess and chaotic, and you know, stuff like paint everywhere. He wipes his brushes on his t-shirts, you know, and ends up, you know, just using everything at his disposal. He says he only puts pants on when he has to, which I thought was hilarious.
So don't show up. It's a good thing he locks the studio door.
But I'm thinking, okay, not that I've painted pantless, but you know, sometimes I'm not like fit for like going out when I'm painting. But I just love the fact that he just seems like such a funny guy, but creates such gorgeous, to me, very serious, powerful pieces. Hey, Nadine, maybe Nadine wants to come on.
Maybe.
And talk a little bit.
Well, and we were chatting yesterday, and you know, the other comment that, and it was interesting because last week we chatted with Robin Davison, and she talked about opening her studio up and inviting people in while she paints, and them to be sort of part of her painterly process. And then in this book, Brian talks about how what does every painter need? A locked door. And so such a contrast in approaches. But
I agree with him there, because look, I've got my Kobos going. I agree with him because you do become more self-conscious if there's somebody around. I will find if I'm painting, and Roman might be watching CNN with it on mute, but he's there. He's like 10 feet away from where I am, and it almost like I can't. Visually, I just don't want anybody else near me when I'm working on something.
Yeah.
So I get that.
Well, and I always wonder, these people who do live painting. I mean, plein air painting is one where you might have people watch you, but there's something advertised locally for, you know, like a paint off.
Yeah.
Where all these people will stand, and you've got an hour, and everyone's going to be watching you. And I think, wow, that I'm not there yet.
And competition, which just you know, it's like a baking show.
Yes.
Wow.
All right.
I'm just skimming through.
Okay.
I just love this.
Solitude is great. So let me, I have tons of questions here. If you could, this is one. If you could ask him a question, what would it be? Maybe we will be able to ask him a question.
I think we will. I have high hopes.
So if anybody out there has a question, you could pop it in the comments and I can take notes so we can ask them later.
Yeah, think about it for a second.
I guess I'm curious about, so something I see in his work and his approach is to, and he talks about this, finding something that, not that you're good at, but something that drives your work, that you're focused on, that, yeah, there's a good question, Nadine. What's his favorite color?
He said his first, well, he didn't say it was his favorite color. His first memory is blue.
Yeah. Will he ever teach? I think he does. He talks about that he talks about that somewhere in the book about a painting workshop in with his, or teaching with his painting students in New York. So he has at some point. How does he begin? How does he finish? Those are good questions.
How long does it take for all of that oil paint to dry? He says that there are some paintings of his that have 3 inches deep of oil paint. Any oil painters out there? How long would it take for one of those behemoth, thickly painted pieces to dry?
Really good question. I've got a couple more in the box. Nadine has asked, does he ever teach? Will he ever teach? I will ask that question. Long time. Yeah, it takes a long time.
20 minutes.
I was curious as to whether he ever works on any other substrates. So he paints on canvas and oil with oil. He didn't really talk about are studies a part of his practice? Does he paint on paper? I don't remember seeing anything. I was curious about that, or whether he just walks into his studio with one of those big canvases and just halves at it.
Well, one of the things he I can't remember which chapter it was. He talked about painting using a color wash, because he said there's something about white canvas that is just, it's so funny because he's like the opposite of Rob. Did you find?
Yes.
Like Rob is all about washes and, really getting in. He doesn't like the impasto. Whereas this guy uses different thicknesses of paint to portray, sort of the middle ground, far away, what's up close. The thicker the paint, the closer it is, and really plays around with that.
Well, that's one of the things I found really fascinating. So I always think of perspective in learning about perspective is in kind of the traditional way, the lines moving in towards the distance, and the way he separates the foreground, the far ground, and then the middle ground, and talks about how the middle ground is really not his job. It's the viewer's job to fill that in. And so he's focusing primarily on the foreground and the long distance. From a if you look at his work, it doesn't seem to be from like a standing looking, it seems to be from a low or from a high.
But he said he paints from like grass, like the blades of grass on up. That's how he kind of see. You don't think of sky when you look at his. Well, at least I don't. I don't think of sky. I think of looking through wild foliage and trees and moss, but I don't actually think of expansiveness. It's more of it's like a place that's quite. It's almost there.
That's
you can almost tell, right?
An atmospheric perspective. You're right, Patricia. Has anybody seen any of his work in person? I mean, I've seen videos, I've seen work that he's put online. And when we were in New York last year, we just missed an exhibition. He had, I think, an exhibition the month before we were there. That was on my radar, but because I would love to see some of this work in person.
Like, how big is it? And, if you look at it from the side, can you see all of that paint just that kind of built up?
Yeah, I think MC Marie Claire has seen his work in person. She's not on today, so. But yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful? Okay, wow. Bucket list.
Bucket list goal.
Bucket list. What other questions did I have? So most of these stories, and essays are quite small. Oh, Rena saw.
Rena, you've seen?
Huge. Like huge. How huge? Like 6 feet by 8 feet huge? They're big. Wow. She'll come back and tell me. So most of these chapters are really, really short. The essays are short. If you watch his vlogs that he does every 2 months, they're about 20 minutes in length. So they would really encapsulate more like 4 or 5 of these little chapters. And if you haven't seen them, you should, because you can tell that he really likes to create with video. He's got interesting music and quotes and different shots, and maybe he wants to be a filmmaker in his
Well, he
in
talks
his
about
next life.
that. He said
Yes.
he wanted it to have like the look of almost like a cooking show.
Yes.
Beautifully filmed with like good voiceover, and he takes a lot of pride in that kind of professionalism.
And I was just curious if there was any of the chapters or little essays in the book that you found you really wanted to be a lot longer than they were, that the treatment of a topic or a question was too short and you wanted to hear him wax poetic for a little bit longer. Does anything jump out at you?
All of them.
All
I actually
them.
felt, and he left me wanting more. Like I
Yes.
just thought, okay, this is just great, for the initial, like, to kind of pique my interest, but I really wanted more. I think has he written more than just this book?
I think there is another book, but I don't know if it's essays. I think it might be more paintings. I'm not positive. I think I looked at that at one point, and I think it was only available through his website. But I don't think it's like this, and I don't see anything in my in the back or the front of the book. One of the other things that we could talk about is that he doesn't talk about expressly here, but from reading his work and listening to him speak, it's very clear that he feels like it's important to have other strange collections of interests.
Yes, Star Trek.
Hey, Bonnie, thanks. In his life. So he's fascinated by magic.
Yes. He said he's a failed magician.
Right.
Because his hands are too big.
Right. So he's fascinated by magic. He was so consumed with Glenn Gould that he moved to Toronto he visited Toronto for a while and went to a coffee shop that Glenn Gould went to every day and slept overnight in the
Franz. I think it was Franz, which is like a famous Toronto.
And his old piano studio was like a storage room next to some shop, and he snuck in there and slept overnight on the cold hard floor.
Yes, Rena, he's a drummer. Like, but he's equally passionate about the way Las Vegas looks. He said it's one of his favorite places to go, with all the neon and the garish colors, and the way the South looks with the beautiful colors. So he finds beauty in the natural, and then this like man-made crazy. And circus banners. He said he learned a lot about design and composition by looking at circus banners, because they had to grab your eye from a great distance. And he said what he learned was that the larger shapes need to be around the outside, and then your eye is kind of drawn into the smaller and smaller bits as you get closer.
Right.
Okay, well, that's a good design tip.
It is. And he had that great quote, "Let your freak flag fly."
Yeah.
But, I thought it'd be interesting to talk about that, how we think about what types of other, that to me surprises me, because I would have thought going into reading this, and if I didn't know anything about his work, I would have made that assumption that somebody who's so productive, prolific, successful, probably has one main thing that he does all the time, but yet he has all of these other interests that are kind of flashy and non-mainstream, that clearly affect the work. And I just thought maybe we could talk about that. If you guys have anything you want to share that you do that's really weird.
But that somehow makes sense based on your art.
It's not weird. Like my love of color, I can tell you where that came from, is I've been a knitter for my entire life, and I've always loved looking. That's what I love about knitting, is hand dyed yarns and all of the really cool color combinations that dyers come up with, and how you get a skein of it and it looks one way, and then you wind it in a ball and then it looks a different way, and then you knit it up and it looks completely different. So from looking at the skein and seeing the colors, you have no idea what that's actually going to produce. And so that's my little side thing, but it's not really that freaky.
You and Vincent Van Gogh, because he shared a story about how Van Gogh had like different bits of yarn that different colors, so he could see how they would look together. So something in common. There is magic and music in his paintings. Oh, for sure.
Definitely. Rena, tell us what your freaky pastime is that influences your painting. What's yours, Barb?
Oh gosh. Huge movie buff. Huge movie buff. Just obsessed with movies and quotes and things like that. I don't know what that has to do with my painting. Maybe just the visual. There's something about certain films that, like The Godfather, there's something about the light in The Godfather and the way that it's filmed and the way that it's shot, and the drama, and just the mood that's created. Again, the score as well, the music as well.
Yeah. No,
your freak flag, Raina, your freak flag.
Something that you're passionate about that is completely different from your art.
Like
you know, like
cooking or
Comic-Con. If you go to Comic-Con.
Yeah, books, music, movies, nature.
The reading this kind of made me want to do something like start collecting Pez dispensers or something, you know, or snow globes, or just something really different and out there. And
like he's a Star Trek fan, huge Star Trek fan, and he said he has all the Green Acres. Is it Green Acres, that TV show?
Yes.
Videos of all the Green Acres episodes in his studio. Why? But he does, and you know, that's something he's obsessed with too. I think the goofier the better. I just see such humor in him, and that to me is so appealing. He doesn't take anything too seriously.
Okay, my next question. What did you Google while you were reading the book? You answered already.
Okay.
Anybody else have an answer to that? Did you have to Google? I must admit, I Googled I went and Googled the galleries and stuff just to see what the art was like. That's okay. You're allowed to talk.
Rocks.
Spy dramas. There you go.
And rocks.
I can tell. Mine's time travel. That's my other thing. I believe in the metaverse. You guys are going to think I'm really crazy now.
Did you go see that? Speaking of, this is a little side. Did you see that Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Loved it.
Hated.
It was so different. It was so different from everything out there. Okay.
Just talking about the metaverse. I'd rather see The Matrix. That's the metaverse too, no?
I love The Matrix.
But there was something about that movie. I saw it with Roman in the theater, and we were partway through, and I said, listen, if you want to leave, I'm okay with that.
Did you leave?
No. But then when we thought it was over, there was another chapter, part 3, and we're just like, oh my God.
I was going to say, because you can't have left before the giant dildos.
I hated it, Patricia. Did you hate it? Like, how much can you do in a movie? And how many bizarro things? And what's with the Google eyes?
The googly eyes? Oh, I loved them. And I loved
how
they had to do something. I loved how they had to do something totally different to jump to the next universe, like, you know, eat the chapstick or.
I forgot about that. Oh my God. So that we are so opposite on this. Oh, Arsenic and Old Lace. Good one.
Yes.
Yeah, old movies too. I love old movies.
I think it's great to have other quirky pastimes because it's got to influence. It's got to, if you're trying to be authentic, as his definition of authentic is letting yourself come out in your work, having these different facets to your personality and your life that maybe have nothing to do with art, they have to be helpful.
I love, that humor. I mean, these aren't, humongous things, but humor to me is super important. Laughing.
Do you collect anything?
Art supplies. I don't have room to collect anything else. Honestly, art supplies.
Okay.
I would be shot. Roman would just we just don't have room. Oh, Bugs Bunny cartoons.
That's a great one.
What about the road Runner and Coyote. Because I think if you're a Bugs Bunny lover, the Coyote and Road Runner, gosh, it's hard to say, were kind of like the opposite.
What do you think Brian's favorite cartoon would be if you had to guess? There's your question.
That funny spaceman, that little one that used to visit. What was that guy's name? What was that little alien, the Martian? What was that little Martian's name who came on Bugs Bunny?
I can't remember.
You can
He
hear it.
didn't talk.
Was he
Did he have a real
Marvin
name?
the Martian? He was like, "Take me to your leader." He was a little.
Yeah, I know. No, I just can't think of what his name was.
Curb Your
There you go.
Enthusiasm. So funny.
Marvin the Martian, Wile E. Coyote.
And I love the frog, the singing frog, the opera frog that wouldn't perform when anybody important was watching.
Yes.
Minnesota something, I think his name was. And they go, "Hello, my baby. Hello."
Yes.
Like, "Hello, my ragtime girl." But he wouldn't sing. He wouldn't perform. He'd turn back into a
Heavens
frog.
to Murgatroyd. That yes.
Oh, Heavens to Murgatroyd.
Oh wow. We're meandering.
Cartoons.
Motown music. There you go.
Oh, Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross and the Supremes, Earth, Wind and Fire.
So if you're just popping on, you're like, what are they talking about? This is a book club. This is a book club. We're talking about this book right here, Clear Seeing Place by Brian Rutenberg, but we digressed and got off on a tangent as we are wont to do.
I just recommended this book to a friend of mine this morning at coffee, and she had no idea like what kind of work Brian Rutenberg did, and so I was showing her some pictures, and she was just like, "Oh my God, look at the color!" And we had a really good conversation about his saturated, vibrant colors, almost neon, looks so beautiful because he's got his mud colors.
Yeah,
that he calls them his mud. And I just thought, yeah, it's a good reminder that yes, you can use those incredibly gorgeous glowing colors, but not everywhere. Well, what's that? That looks like the runny stuff. Is that like the liquid, like the
fluorescent green? It came home with me today. I'm dying.
But that's like the runny stuff.
Yeah, it's the fluid. I'm just going to use it to
high flow.
Just add a little. Yeah, just add a little bit. Raina, you have his other book. Is it written a little long time, or is it mainly paintings? We wait for the answer. Do.
You want to see? Oh, come see my boy. Where is he? Can you see him?
I can.
There's my baby.
He's sweetheart.
That's Forrest, if anybody doesn't know Forrest. This is what he does when I'm not painting. He likes to read with me.
Okay, text and painting. I know. I think it was a bit more expensive. That's why I didn't order it. I'll put it on my birthday list.
When's your birthday?
June 7th. If anyone's listening, that's on my birthday list.
June 7th.
Is it really loud? June
7th.
This is the book I want from. No, I have to yell out what book I want. Is anybody, so anything else that we haven't covered? I mean, I know there's so much to talk about in this book, and we're not like a traditional book club where we just, beat it to death. We like the book.
Is there anyone on here who hasn't read the book?
They probably don't want to admit it. Jeez, gonna out people for not reading a book.
If you haven't read it, read it immediately, because it is such a wonderful book. It makes one paint. He loves to play with different mediums, and he talks about the different mediums he's used, but then he also talks about the crazy stuff that he's used. Yeah. He's mixed paint with gasoline. Oh, Douglas.
I think you'd like it, Douglas.
Yeah, you got to read it, Douglas. It's a fun book. It's not a long book, but it's just full. It's like a big box of chocolates, and there's so much good stuff in there.
Megan, you know what? I know you like to listen and watch movies when you're in the studio. Go to his YouTube channel and put him on in the background while you're painting, because
another non-reader. Oh, got to read it too.
Yay! Got to run to your local bookstore after this. It's a fabulous book. Sorry.
Amazon.
Don't say that.
Or do what I do. Just download it if you got a Kobo.
Support your local bookseller.
But our local bookseller probably wouldn't have it.
That's true.
And they'd have to order it and then 6 weeks from now I'd be able to read it.
I highly recommend his YouTube channel because a lot of these essays, they sounded familiar to me from watching and listening to that over the years. And he only releases one about every 2 months. So, I think the last one was about a month ago. So I start to get towards that 2 month mark and I'm like stalking. Oh, has he got a new one coming out yet?
Okay, you just missed my first. Every time I do this every time I open up a new thing of bubbly or whatever, the first sip lands on my stomach. Just did it. I don't know why. Sorry.
Cool, Megan. You've got an afternoon. You're going down the rabbit hole. Let me know what you think. Yes, and Rena, you're right. He's got a really, really great presentation manner.
Yeah.
I think he would be awesome to have a beer with, and I think maybe
barbecue. He loves barbecue.
That's true.
That's a passion of his, is barbecue.
Thanks, Pretty, for admitting that. No shame in not having read the book.
Shame. But Pretty, you got to read it.
Read it.
Love it.
I think you would love it.
Still mopping up.
With your love of color, you would love it. For sure. And
I wonder, wouldn't it be cool to, because to me, honestly, Robert Sott and Brian Rutenberg, or Rutenberg, I'm still not sure how to pronounce it. They are like opposite in terms of how they treat the canvas, because Rob starts right on raw, unprimed linen, or is it primed? Or maybe he primes it, but then he works small and kind of builds out. Whereas from what I recall from the book, he will cover it in a ground color, whether it's like royal blue or some kind of green, and because he doesn't like working on white. And then he paints very thickly. Rob paints very thinly. Like they're just to me so opposite. It'd be interesting to have them as like a panel.
Well, and they're both New York artists. I wonder if they've interacted at all. I know there's a bit of an age gap, maybe a 10-year age gap or so, that might have meant they weren't in the formative years at the same time.
5 years younger than me, this guy.
Oh yeah, and Nick too. We can't bring on 3, alas, unless we have.
I'd have to go on.
Or
but
me.
Wouldn't they be interesting? Because they are so different in terms of how they. But I think they're equally passionate and equally entertaining.
Be really an interesting panel. Okay, I think we have something new.
A town hall, like a town hall kind of thing. Wow, that would be fun.
Excellent. Well, we're at almost at 50 minutes, and we only got through about a quarter of my questions, but
that's okay.
That's absolutely okay. I don't know when our next no book required.
No book required. Book club. No book required.
For those of you who didn't read the book,
actually,
we're going to call it
kind of
no book required.
Just the wine and the cheese and the crackers.
Exactly.
Oh, Rena, I downloaded that book Rena was talking about yesterday. About was it Mark?
The Rick Rubin book?
Yeah.
Maybe that would be a good one for next time. What's it called? I know everybody's been reading it. It's been doing the circuit. So if we want to hop on that wagon, we could. We've had so many other recommendations. Yeah. I don't think it would be hard for us to find something.
I think
the advantage
the key is one that's just not as long as Picasso's War, because that was long. That took me forever to read. I think I read that right up until like 5 minutes before we went on.
Yeah.
It was great.
I know. And there was a lot to retain, and there was a lot to Google search.
A lot to Google.
Well, we wouldn't be able to do it now till the end of May. We're going to have a few weeks break in April because I'm going to Italy.
Woohoo!
Don't hate me.
I hate you.
I'm going to Italy. So I'm not gonna figure out the time zone differences and come on and
check.
So
are you going next week?
No, I'm still around for next Tuesday, so we can chat next Tuesday if we have any brilliant ideas.
Do we have a guest next Tuesday?
No. Oh. Do you want to be a guest? Who wants to be a guest?
Come on.
Patricia, you want to be a guest? Message us at the end of the show if you want to come on and be a guest next week. We're easy to talk to. We can come up with an idea for a conversation.
So easy.
We always find touch points. We always find commonalities, and then we just go off from there.
Mhm.
But we'll be gone the next 3 weeks. So we only have 1 week in April, and then we're gone because I don't get back till the 26th, which is a Wednesday.
We won't be back till May.
Yeah, our
Oh,
next.
Brian, I'm going to email Rena. I've got it all worked out. I will send him an email. I'm going to offer maybe May or June, give him some time.
He did say in the book that he answers every email. He's one of those artists that is not a dick to younger artists.
Or older artists.
Or older. Or less established.
Yes. And he also said being nice and kind is like the top of his list. And I loved that whole part. He reinforced that, how important it is to be kind, how important it is to be nice. And I just thought, wow, that seems like simple advice, right? But something to really apply.
Yeah.
I bet he says yes. Patricia, you must be in New York City then.
He is.
Bump into him with a cup of coffee so it kind of spills on him a little. Like one of the, oh, you're that artist. Well, we were just talking about you in our Instagram book club and blah, 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 blah. Pave the way.
Yeah, that would be great. So I think we'll be here next week. We'll find a way to be here, even if it's just us blabbing. We find something to talk about always, right?
It's fine to talk about.
Yeah, we can talk about how panicked I am with packing at the last minute and prepping for a show that I haven't told you guys about yet. That happens mid-May, and I'm going to be gone for 2.5 weeks of my prep time. Sorry.
Well, you just started, Forrest. Come on.
I'll let you know how I'm doing next week. I'll let you know that I've made really good progress.
I want to see like what you've done so far. I want to see these like vibrant background colors.
They're very vibrant. They're jumping out at me.
Good. They must be close to you.
They must be what?
Close to you. You just looked off to
yeah, they're all around me. I'm sitting in like bright, saturated, fluorescent colors.
Good.
Happy vibe.
Good. Yep.
Awesome. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for coming today and chatting. And if you didn't read the book, go buy it. We're not getting any kickbacks for that.
No, we're not. You won't regret it. You will not regret it. You will love it.
You won't. And if you do read it and you want to answer any of those questions we talked about, just send us a message or, post it underneath the replay. This will be up in half an hour. You'll be able to see it. And thank you. Yep. Thank you, Patricia.
Yeah.
Thank you, Douglas. Thank you, Rena. Thank you, Nadine, who left already.
Yep.
Well, this is there.
Who sent a comment our way. It's challenging to do a book club when we're like the two talking heads. But it's nice to know you guys are out there.
Yeah. And we're having fun. Thanks, Eve.
Your feedback.
All righty. Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Arrivederci.
Ciao. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao bella.
Bye.